During my childhood, Batman Forever was a guilty pleasure of my mother's, meaning that it was on quite frequently in my household growing up. Though I respect my mother's enjoyment of the film, I personally always found it boring and way too over the top. I much preferred sticking to my own Batman franchise of choice, Batman the Animated Series. But now that I'm a 30-year-old adult, let's see if I can tinker with Joel Schumacher's initial at-bat with The Dark Knight to create a pitch that would have sustained my limited attention span younger self. First off though, let's run through the parameters I've set for myself, since, like in my other redo pitches, I'm not seeking to create an entirely original concept, but instead looking to rehabilitate what was made. As such, Two-Face and the Riddler are still the main baddies of this new pitch. Dr. Chase Meridian is still brought in as a new love interest for Bruce Wayne, and Robin's origin story will still be told with the sidekick being in his late teens to early 20s instead of between 10 and 13 as per the comics. I even included a role for Riddler's initial victim, Fred Stickley, though in large part due to my immense love for Ed Begley Jr. Another element I included into this pitch is merging the characters of Salvatore Maroni and Tony Zucco into a single individual. I know that choice might be seen as controversial, but I did it to keep in the spirit of Batman '89 and Batman Returns, which this pitch is a theoretical sequel to, where they amalgamated certain characters to streamline the storytelling, most notably with Joker and Joe Chill. But enough of this prattle, on to the pitch. The cold open would start off with Batman racing through the streets of Gotham in pursuit of gangster Tony Zucco. The terrified Zucco would ultimately stumble upon the traveling Haley Circus on the outskirts and would hide from the Dark Knight amongst the guests and performers. When Batman would finally catch up to him within the main tent during a performance by the Flying Graysons attraction, Zucco would have a weapon trained on the suspension cables being utilized by the performers and would threaten his pursuer to allow for his escape lest he damaged the cables mid-act. Thinking quickly, Batman would shunt a batarang into his hand and throw it at Zucco to immobilize him in one fluid motion. But as the gangster would flail in response, he would accidentally follow through with his threat. John and Mary Grayson would tragically fall to their deaths alongside their elder son, Mitch, all before the eyes of the younger son, Dick, who would find himself helpless to prevent it. Batman's face would convey the horror of the event as the bodies colliding with the ground would be heard in the background. After the main credits sequence, Bruce, struggling through the guilt from his role in the deaths of John, Mary, and Mitch Grayson, would be shown conducting a mandatory audit of Wayne Enterprises. An eccentric company researcher named Edward Nygma would excitedly ambush him to attempt to sell to him directly on the proof of concept for an invention that would aid the GCPD in profiling criminals that he would quickly mention his manager, Fred Stickley, is giving him the runaround on. Bruce, shown to be obviously dismissive and uncomfortable by Edward's closeness and hyper-mannerisms, would repeatedly attempt to blow the man off until finally he snaps. As Edward would reel backward, hurt by the rejection of someone he holds in such obvious high regard, Fred Stickley would appear and hurriedly scramble to shuffle Edward off, admonishing him for his inappropriate forwardness with the company's CEO and for breaking chain of command. Edward's face would wordlessly contort in hurt as his eyes would linger on Bruce. He would then angrily glare at both Bruce and Fred as the scene would come to a close. With the guilt becoming overwhelming, Bruce would seek out Dick to convince the young man to stay at his mansion instead of striking it out on his own, and even to accept an all-expenses-paid internship at Wayne Enterprises. While this is all happening, Zucco would be put on trial for his numerous crimes, with Assistant District Attorney Harvey Dent attempting to prosecute him. But during cross-examination, the gangster would pull out a vial of acid he smuggled into the courthouse and toss the contents into Harvey's face, severely wounding him. During the ensuing panic, Zucco would make an escape while Harvey would be hospitalized. During Dick's internship at Wayne Enterprises, Edward would quickly buddy up to Dick, intrigued by his close proximity to Bruce Wayne. Through conversations with Dick, Edward would deduce Bruce's identity as Batman, despite Dick's own ignorance to this fact. As time goes on, Edward would be shown to be a bad influence on Dick, alerting him to Zucco's escape and encouraging him to strike out on his own to seek vengeance. Back with Harvey, with half his face now disfigured, he would break out of the hospital and begin a killing spree of the gangsters of Gotham's underbelly with association to Zuko in an effort to ascertain the latter's location. He would now be dubbed Two-Face by the public and using coin flips to determine the fate of those he sees as complicit in the corruption of Gotham. Two-Face's actions quickly come to the attention of Batman and GCPD Commissioner James Gordon, who begin tracking him down in an attempt to get their former friend hospitalized with hopes that he can be rehabilitated. To aid in their pursuit, they call in psychologist Chase Meridian, specializing in dissociative identity disorder, which it becomes increasingly clear Harvey is now suffering from. Unfortunately, Batman's search for Two-Face would be repeatedly impeded by Dick placing himself in dangerous situations during his own pursuit of Zuko across the streets of Gotham. Bruce would grow fond of Meridian while working alongside her as Batman, even culminating in a kiss between the two during a particularly tender moment, so he would make up an excuse to run into her in his civilian identity to romance her properly. When kissing passionately for the first time, on the cusp of sleeping with one another, Meridian would immediately make the connection with Bruce's identity as the Dark Knight. She would confront him about this and playfully psychoanalyze his obsessive desire to be Gotham's protector. Just as the two's night would heat back up, she would receive a personal call which would cause her to quickly depart Wayne Manor, asking for a rain check on their date. The next day, Bruce would find Meridian's residence vacant and, while rendezvousing with Gordon about the Two-Face case, would be told that Meridian informed the commissioner that she had to leave Gotham for personal reasons all of the sudden. While talking this over with Alfred, Bruce would voice his assumption that Meridian simply couldn't handle his double life just like Vicky Vale before her. Bruce would observe a televised broadcast from current Gotham City Mayor Burien Moore commenting on the state of Gotham and condemning the actions of Two-Face. News anchor Summer Gleason would then be shown conducting an on-the-street interview with two clearly inebriated young women outside a bar, introducing themselves as Sugar and Spice, drunkenly declaring their support and admiration for Two-Face's brand of deadly vigilantism. Disgusted, Bruce would shut off the TV. Turning back to the main plotline, Gordon would eventually catch up to Two-Face, but while he would be distracted, attempting in vain to appeal to the Harvey Dent aspect of the villain's psyche, the latter would get the better of him. Two-Face would hold the police commissioner at gunpoint, but when he would flip his coin, it would turn up heads, so he would knock the commissioner out instead of killing him. Perspective would begin to alternate in quick succession between Dick and Two-Face's individual pursuits of Tony Zuko. Suddenly, the terrified gangster would be seen confronted by an obscured individual who would proceed to knock him out. The camera would pan, but instead of either Dick or Two-Face, Zuko's attacker would be shown to instead be Edward Nygma, who would then drag the unconscious man away. Edward, now calling himself the Riddler and exuding extreme theatrics, would take over Gotham's airwaves to announce a public contest between Batman and Two-Face over whether the latter can reach a captive Zuko to exact his vengeance, or whether Batman would reach Two-Face first to prevent this, both needing to solve a series of riddles to keep inching closer to their respective goals. The Riddler would also reveal a captive Meridian chase as extra incentive for Batman to compete in the competition. While Batman and Two-Face would both begrudgingly begin partaking in the Riddler's contest, the latter, in his civilian guise as Wayne Enterprises researcher Edward Nygma, would encourage Dick Grayson to also participate, to reach Zuko for his own vengeance, wishing for him to become a continued obstacle in Batman's way. Dick would impede Batman's progress in the contest just as the Riddler planned. During an argument between the two over Dick's right to seek vengeance for his family, the Caped Crusader would reveal his secret identity to calm the young man's animosity. After regrouping at the Batcave, Bruce would bestow Dick with a costume of his own, and the two would continue through the Riddler's contest together as Batman and Robin, Robin being a pet name Dick's mother used to affectionately refer to him as. Two-Face would reach the final riddle of the contest, whose solution would involve murdering Fred Stickley. But when Two-Face would flip his coin, it would turn up heads, so he would refuse to kill him. The Riddler would then appear to him, revealing himself to have secretly been aiding his fellow villain through the contest, enabling him to finish before Batman. The Riddler would then further reveal that he never actually considered Two-Face to have been an actual contender in the contest, instead viewing him as yet another obstacle for Batman, the actual sole participant, to overcome within a larger scheme. Though Two-Face would prepare to kill Tony Zuko, the Riddler would attempt to persuade him to table his vengeance in lieu of a more dramatic televised execution in the near future. After flipping his coin and it coming up heads, Two-Face would begrudgingly relent. The Riddler would then showcase Fred Stickley on live television within an intricate saw-like trap to taunt Batman for supposedly losing his contest, as Two-Face would be seen standing stoically in the background. When the Wayne Enterprises executive would fail to answer one of the Riddler's riddles correctly, the trap would trigger, killing Stickley. Eventually, Batman and Robin would complete the contest themselves and confront the Riddler in Bruce's office on the top floor of the Wayne Enterprises main building, with the final riddle being solved as a result of the dynamic duo deducing the villain's true identity. The Riddler would then lead them to one final dilemma. Two-Face would have a gun pointed at Zuko, while the Riddler would push Robin to decide whether to attack Two-Face in defense of his family's killer or to allow his death to finally have justice served. Batman would attempt to appeal to Robin, but the Riddler would have arranged for Chase Meridian to be dropped off the roof of the building within a short time, forcing the Dark Knight to take off to save her, trusting Dick to make the right decision on his own. Robin would ultimately elect to attack Two-Face in defense of Zuko, while Batman would successfully rescue Meridian. Afterward, Batman would pursue the Riddler, who would unleash booby traps throughout their current floor of the building to impede the vigilante long enough to escape. Dick would defeat Two-Face while Batman defeats the Riddler, despite the latter throwing the fact that he knows the hero's secret identity in his face, threatening to expose it. Dick would confront Zuko, who would thank him for saving him from the two madmen, but Dick would declare him to be worse than either of the other two villains. Zuko would attempt to bribe him to allow him to flee, but Dick would roughly yell that he's going to be turned into the GCPD and never see the outside of a jail cell ever again. Following this, Batman would struggle to get through to the Harvey Dent aspect of Two-Face's personality. He would seem to be making some headway with this, but Harvey would suddenly become overwhelmed with regret for his past actions and wouldn't think he could ever make up for them. The Two-Face persona would periodically take control of the body throughout this scene, issuing threats to Batman. A countdown would then initiate, and the Riddler would reveal that he planted a bomb within the Wayne Enterprises building that would cause the entire structure to collapse when detonated. He would pose an intricate scenario-style riddle and would state that if the bomb could be located, the answer to the riddle would serve as the passcode to disarm it. After scouring the building with the aid of Wayne Enterprises tech scattered about and recalling key conversations between himself and Edward Nygma during the course of their time working together, Robin would eventually locate the massive bomb while Batman would puzzle over the answer to the riddle. Eventually, Batman would finally figure out the answer and input it into the attached keypad with just over 2 minutes left on the timer. The bomb would seemingly defuse and the timer would stop. But then the outer structure of the bomb would recede to reveal yet another, smaller explosive inside. The Riddler would gleefully begin stating the parameters of the actual grand finale, the greatest riddle he's got. But as he would tell the long-winded riddle, Batman and Robin would stop paying attention, acknowledging to one another that this so-called grand finale has no end and would just be the Riddler distracting them as the bomb's countdown ticks away. As Robin would spitball courses of action to be taken, Bruce would reveal a private panic room with indestructible paneling within his office, but would state that it only would close from the inside. He would prepare to sacrifice himself by sealing himself inside, along with the bomb. But suddenly Harvey Dent, having wrestled control of his body away from his Two-Face persona, would take the bomb into the panic room himself. During Harvey's final moments of life, he would express regret for his actions and apologize for what he's done. After thanking Batman for enabling him to come back to his senses, the bomb would detonate, tragically killing him. Batman and Robin would solemnly escort Meridian and the captive Tony, Zuko, and Riddler out of the building where the GCPD would be gathered en masse. As Zuko would be loaded into a police car, with Robin observing triumphantly, Gordon would privately converse with Batman. Gordon would declare that the gangster would be going back to prison, but as the two would observe the Riddler spastically writhing and screaming, they would both agree that he would undoubtedly be sent to Arkham Asylum. They would then share some solemn words regarding Harvey Dent. Meridian would interrupt them, privately expressing concerns to Batman over the Riddler's knowledge of his secret identity. Batman would wave off this concern, saying that no one would believe a madman. The next scene would open with Meridian entering Arkham Asylum, where Director Hugo Strange would have a Dr. Burton escort her to the Riddler's cell. Addressing the villain, Meridian would inquire what he would intend on doing with the knowledge of Batman's secret identity. Though the Riddler would initially play coy, he would eventually brag that he has the answer to the greatest riddle on Earth, but would admit that the riddle would be spoiled if everyone else also knew the answer. Meridian would then depart Arkham, relieved that Bruce's secret is safe. Meridian would then arrive at Bruce's mansion to inform him that his secret is safe, before she would announce that she would be leaving Gotham to return to her home city now that the Two-Face case would be concluded. While she would admit her immense feelings toward Bruce, and despite another tender moment between the two, she would admit that she couldn't pursue a relationship with him, as he would always prioritize his devotion to Gotham. Though hurt, Bruce would understand her decision. After she would leave, he would go down into the Batcave where Dick would be at, training. Dick would lightly begin to bust Bruce's chops about Meridian, though would quickly comfort him when Bruce would admit to feeling that he is destined to be forever alone, telling his new friend and older brother-like figure that he's not alone. Alfred would pop in to announce that some disturbed individual is running around causing trouble, dressed in a toga, and having fooled a mob of gullible saps that he's some kind of Greek god. Bruce would suit up as Batman and would tell Robin that it's time for them to get to work before they both would hop into the Batmobile. It would exit the cave as the film would come to an end. So there you have it. What did you all think? I want to give a shout out to user Ruth H. Gavillano 9580 for requesting this redo pitch. Let me know what you all thought about my changes in the comments. How would you guys have altered Batman Forever? Would you have even altered it at all, or do you enjoy it just as it is? Anyway, you all know the deal by now. Engagement through liking and commenting helps me out a lot. And subscribe for more pitch content like this video. The next pitches in the pipeline are one for integrating the Iron Giant into proper DC Comics continuity, and a redo pitch for that awful Kraven the Hunter movie that Sony tried to sully the holiday season with. Lastly, click on the video on the left to see my pitch for how to include a comics-accurate Robin within the Matt Reeves Batverse, and click the video below it to see my redo pitch for the Joker 2. Ciao for now, y'all.